I'd like to welcome you to the second of SSB's Thought Leadership webinar series, today featuring Adam Heinz of Monumental Sports and Entertainment. My name is Steve Hank, Senior Vice President at SSB. Our first webinar in our series was actually 2 weeks ago with Jeff Hunt of Legend Labs, talking about the impact of COVID-19 and how you can communicate and engage with your constituents. And if you'd like to watch that one, it is available on the SSB website, on-demand video, by going to the top of our website and clicking on the webinar series. If you have to leave today's session early, Adam's session will be posted there also at the end of over the next couple days at that same location. Just a couple housekeeping issues. For this webinar, we have opened up the chat function at the bottom of your page. So if you'd like to chat with the other webinar participants, please feel free to do so. Also, there is a Q&A function where you can ask questions that we will moderate and get to as many as we can after Adam completes his presentation today. So, but let's dive right in with Adam. I'd like to do a quick introduction, and he'll give his presentation on the best practices at Monumental Sports and Entertainment. So Adam is the Senior Vice President of Business Intelligence at Monumental Sports, overseeing all the strategy, analytics, and efforts across ticket sales, corporate partnerships, premium seating, and marketing for all of the Monumental Sports properties. Prior to joining Monumental, Adam served as the President of Onasis, a living social subsidiary, and also worked at Orbitz. He's a graduate of Ohio University and has his MBA from the University of Chicago and is a great friend of SSB. So Adam, welcome and take it away.
Thanks, Steve. As I sit here, I've come to the realization there is nothing more terrifying than watching numbers of participants pop up on the Zoom as you sit there. It's like watching people walk into a room for a presentation. So thanks again for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Obviously, we do have a great relationship with SSB, have been a great partner of ours over the years. So I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna share my screen here. I have just a few slides to go through. I've got a little bit of kind of what our journey has been on sort of this data strategy, this data structure process. I'm gonna do everything I can to make it interesting to folks as possible, but also make sure that I leave some time at the end for questions. I know there's quite a few folks from across the space on this meeting, so I want to cover different areas of the spectrum that I know people are in this process, and again make sure that I leave some time at the end for questions. So sharing my screen now. And so hopefully everybody can see that. You guys know my name, so we'll skip by that one. So by way of quick introduction for Monumental, for those of you that might not be as familiar with our entity. So we are one of 4 properties in North America with the setup in terms of properties that we have under our purview. So they split really into the 3 groups that you see here. So the teams and franchises, of which the most recognizable being the Capitals, Wizards, and the Mystics. There are a number of other properties associated there as well. We have an NBA 2K team, Wizards District Gaming, Capital City Go-Go in the G League, and then our association with Team Liquid in the esports space as well. We also own and operate a number of venues, the big one being Capital One Arena in downtown Washington, D.C. And then you see here a number of our practice facilities. So the Capitals facility at MedStar Capitals Iceplex. These types of properties allow us to have even more data integration and customer acquisition, and I'll obviously touch on that here in a little bit. And then from a media side, a number of other things associated with Monumental as well, our over-the-top network, Monumental Sports Network, all of our radio properties, Monumental Outdoor, which is our advertising network, and then our relationship with NBC Sports Washington, which again, I'll talk about as well. So I'm actually gonna start here with a video, and I wanna preface this video with a couple of things. The first that you'll notice is that this is very clearly a marketing video a sales video for when we were attempting to enter the sales process for the Wizards jersey patch. So as many of you know, the NBA opened up the ability to sell the entitlement to the jersey a few seasons ago, and we were having conversations with a number of properties. We ended up with our great partner Geico, but one of the conversations that we were having was, would it be possible to integrate a technology vendor, a technology partner into the jersey patch? And so, one, you'll see that obviously this is a sales-focused video. Two, in these conversations with these technology companies, what we wanted to show and what it really allowed us to do, or what it became, was a forcing function for what we wanted our data strategy, our fan interaction strategy to be. And so what you'll see in here, and this is my last point before starting this, is, and I want to be clear, we're nowhere near, even now, months and years later from producing this video originally, into having all of these things integrated into our system and our day-to-day operation. But what it forced us to do is put a vision to our roadmap as to what the fan experience for our Caps fans, and in this instance, our Wizards fan, could be. So I'll play the video and then continue from there.
Wall tries, and the left-handed slam over Lopez. Nice move by Kelly, goes all the way for the slam. Good pass, Wall to Cortez. That's it, the horn sounds, and the Wizards are victorious.
We got to stay focused and continue to play hard.
Congratulations, go enjoy this one.
So obviously a lot of things happening on that video. And again, let me reiterate a few things. One, we didn't sell the jersey patch to a tech partner that was able to do a vast project of that for us. So we had to go do it ourselves. And so the next step in that process is a little bit and can be a little bit overwhelming, which is, okay, now what are the things that need to be integrated into a data warehouse, into a system that could start to feed the process of being able to do some of those things in that video. So food and beverage offers, targeted segmented emails, even into things that, like I said, we haven't gotten to yet, real-time offers, real-time discounts. So you start with the forcing function of the video, and you come to the realization that that's the easy part, right? It's why video production, it's why Hollywood is amazing. You're able to do a lot of things visually that aren't real yet. And so the next step was a little bit of what you see here, which is, what are all the pieces of the puzzle that need to be put together? And we sat down as a team and came up with, north of 20 ingestion points that we knew people were going to or eventually would have a relationship with one of our teams or properties. And we would want to utilize that data in some way. So, historically, these were, things like ticketing, but that gets, more, both easier and more complex with the advent of digital ticketing. You've got full season partners, you have partials, you have single game buyers, you have the in-arena experience across Wi-Fi, seat upgrades, merchandise, and then you've got all your third-party channels, which has become harder and harder over time to gather data. Thanks to the Cambridge Analyticas of the world, the third parties, the Twitters, Instagram, Facebooks are not necessarily sharing that data, nor do I think a lot of people as individuals would want them to. But how do we integrate as much of that information as possible as well? As with any team, as with any organization, we don't do many of those things by ourselves. From a survey perspective, seat upgrades, mobile apps. So how do you work with your vendor partners to get all that stuff into the right place? And then what's the layer that's going to integrate all those things together, and how do you get that outbound to our customers? And for us, we wanted the ability to communicate with those customers across a lot of channels. So email is obviously hugely important to us, as is the tried and true sales approach with reps. Arming those folks with the right information. Our social channels, texting, remarketing, push notifications, all places that we wanted to have the flexibility to be able to communicate with our fans. So in our case, in some respects, we started with the vision. We then put pen to paper on what all the pieces of information that we needed to integrate are. And then I put this chart in here. So this is actually, this is our first chart coming out of integrating our data warehouse. And so what we were able to do, and this was within the first 6 or 8 weeks of our relationship with SSB and having our team get access to the data warehouse, we were able to connect our ticketing data and our email data. And this is not rocket science. This is not earth-shattering analysis, but one of the things that I think we were really interested in doing, especially as you think about how to communicate this across an organization, is we wanted to show the executive team, all of our groups at Monumental, what realistically outputs of a data warehouse could be. So we integrated this ticketing data through Ticketmaster, our email partner is Eloqua, and we matched up email subscribers and ticketing revenue. And so what you're seeing here, legitimately, this is why it looks like an 8th grader did it. This is a Microsoft Excel chart of Ticketmaster revenue aligned with subscriber information. And obviously, subscribers on the right, ticketing revenue on the left. And what we were able to do is go back in time and say, okay, in January, we acquired 16,000 new, or I'm sorry, about 30,000 new email subscribers. Over the course of the next 6 months, let's say, those subscribers drove, and that's why the number, the revenue number goes down over time, because there's been there was less time for those people to make a purchase. But those 30,000 subscribers drove a little over $900,000 in revenue. Again, not rocket science, not hugely intuitive data, but it could help us. One, it could show that we were making progress with a data warehouse project. But two, it allows you to inform all sorts of decisions. So, from a customer acquisition budgeting standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, we knew that in this case, the subscribers that we acquired in January that drove those $900,000 in ticket sales spent about $33 per subscriber. And that, like I said, can help you inform quite a few things. My slide is not moving. So then fast forward 18 months, and obviously that is a big jump. So we had the vision. We figured out the integration points that we wanted to bring in. We started with some very early wins around ticketing revenue and email subscribers. And this is now what our ecosystem looks like, again, 18 months to 2 years later. We are somewhere in the ballpark of 15 or so data sources integrated, and I'll walk through some of them here. And this is when you can start to see the wheels turn on how you go out and activate some of this information, because I think that's where, and I'll talk about this here a little bit more in a second, but one of the things that I think tends to happen is organizations will focus on aggregating data. We've got it all in the data warehouse. We're doing this exercise, that exercise. I think the key to everything, and certainly one of the things that we've tried to focus on, is how is this going to drive revenue? And so, you see our ecosystem here, and so we're a Salesforce organization on the CRM side. We use Eloqua for email. I talked about Ticketmaster. Fanatics and Aramark are our food and beverage and merchandise providers. We have an interesting relationship with a partnership with NBC Sports Washington as a equity holder in Monumental Sports Network, and vice versa. So you think about all these data points. What is somebody buying in the team store, food and beverage, and what are they watching on through our OTT channels? And you can really start to paint that picture of a fan. And it allows you to go out and back to my original point, what's the right thing to communicate with that person at the right time? And maybe that's an offer, and I'll talk through some examples of that later. But maybe it's just, we're able to tell that you bought a certain thing at the team store, and so we should feature that player in your newsletters. Maybe we can tell what your favorite food and beverage item is, and we're able to, feature offers for things like that. And again, I'll walk through some examples. The other piece that I'll mention here that I think is interesting, and we're just scratching the surface, is our relationship with William Hill, who was announced as our sports betting partner a few months back. So Washington, D.C. was one of the first jurisdictions to legalize sports betting. Coronavirus has not helped, obviously, the ramp up and certainly execution of sports betting these days. But we're really excited to have this partnership with William Hill, and then potentially, find as many ways to make the experience for all of our fans as good as possible. And, for a lot of those, the excitement of making bets is going to be part of that. And so, we're not going to ever have a relationship with them where we're sharing betting data, or they're sharing betting data with us with individuals. But obviously, from a promotional standpoint, just in the way that food and beverage and merchandise and all these other things are part of the game day experience, we certainly think that sports betting is going to be a big part of that experience moving forward. So again, you reach a point in this process where the continual acquisition, the continual aggregation of data is never going to end. And I think that's something that we've certainly communicated across our organization at Monumental, is this concept of the data warehouse as a project is not something that we're going to reach a point ever where we check that box and say, okay, our data strategy is done. Let's move on to the next thing. But what we have tried to do is turn the page from the warehouse, the all of the data points, all the consumers that are in there into, for lack of a better term, doing cool stuff with it. And what I mean by that is, you have to turn these insights into things that are going to allow people to, or encourage people to interact more with your organization, to buy more tickets, to upgrade tickets, to interact more with your brands. And so what we have spent the better part of, I would say, the last 6 or 8 months doing is really focusing on the execution side of that, of the data. And so through some other partners and vendors that we've worked with, we've worked to build these insights, the fan insights, on top of the data warehouse that we have. Again, back to the let's do cool things with them. So some of the things that we've done, we've built a tagging engine on top of our warehouse. So taking things like not just your typical demographic data, but also preferences. So where do you, not only what games do you come to, but where do you like to sit? What food and beverage, not just items do you like to buy, but brands? What things do you like to do potentially in the arena while you're there? Do you buy from a certain concession stand? Are there only certain opponents that you come and see? And what we've seen in the first, like I said, first six or 8 months of really being able to activate on this data is, not surprisingly, people are interested in the things that are most pertinent to them. And so, an output of this is we've had an increase of about 250% of our email messaging on a year-over-year basis, which is something that I'm not sure our fantastic email team is too happy about. But what it has allowed us to do is send those messages in so many more targeted ways that the interaction on those, while increasing our sends by 250%, which obviously we didn't send an insignificant amount of email prior to this, by increasing that 2.5x and still having the engagement levels hold, is obviously a fantastic thing for our business. And that's where I circle back to this concept of, somebody doesn't necessarily have to buy something for a campaign to be successful. If we're able to reduce the amount of quiet people we have in our audience and just get them to start interacting more, obviously good things can come from that. So what do some of these examples look like? I'll talk through a few here, and then hopefully questions are starting to bubble up, and we can talk about some topics that people want to talk about. But here are a few things that we've toyed around with. So most of what you're going to see here, at least on this page, are examples from the Wizards, from the Washington Wizards, which NBA fans or certainly DC folks, the Wizards have had a challenging year this year. So one of the things that we're tasked with, and I think all teams and marketing teams, analytics teams, have to focus on, how do you operate successfully outside of team success. It certainly could be a challenge, but one of the things that we really focused on the Wizards front this year is to have as many promotions on an ongoing basis as possible. And so prior to the COVID situation, I want to say we were in the 30 to 35 promotions running for the Wizards this year. And again, some of that is not, aren't going to be huge revenue drivers for us, but if we're able to get people into our ecosystem and start to teach them or learn from them in terms of what kind of relationship that they want to have with the Washington Wizards, obviously, then when you have a situation where good things start to happen on the team side, then demand kicks in and you're able to really leverage that opportunity. And so, first example here, we offered a give and go pass this year, which was a subscription model, which maybe people have seen, $49 a month, and a day of game single ticket for any number of games over that month. And so, this is something that to a 55-year-old corporate executive who wants to host clients at a game is not important, right? This is the kind of thing that's targeted to potentially a younger audience, somebody who you're trying to integrate into the organization that's maybe is passionate about basketball already, but doesn't necessarily have the resources to be a full season ticket holder. it's somebody who, and this is where we get to things that are, tags and segments that are more important than things like, age and income level. When does somebody buy their tickets for a particular game? So a product like this could be meaningful for somebody or any segment of people who buy tickets within 48 hours of the event, because with this ticket, with this give and go package, you don't get your seat assignment until the day of the game. And so, this is where obviously tracking all these different tags and these different data sources become really important. And we had a lot of great success with the give and go pass coming out of the gate. The beer and basketball, I think this is a little bit more of a traditional kind of giveaway promotion that a lot of teams will do. I think where we were able to get a little bit more unique on this, one is by sending messages to people that we know have bought beer in the arena in the past, which is again back to the not being rocket science. The other thing we're able to target here is not just beer drinkers, but also people who are supportive of giveaways. So we're tagging in our data and our game information where are the particular giveaways for bobbleheads and things like that. And obviously there is a segment of our audience who are interested in getting that incremental value for a game, and so having something like this obviously is potentially of interest to them. And then the last one, the family pack is something again that a lot of teams and organizations will do, where we tried to get a little bit more unique on this is not just your typical your typical family pack and let's use our Axiom data to guess who has kids. And this comes back to where the complexity of an organization like Monumental can be helpful across properties and venues. What are the other things that people are attending, right? Are you purchasing family shows? Are you purchasing child size items in the team store? Again, none of these offers, and certainly the family pack is no exception, are going out to hundreds of thousands or millions of people a week or a month. But again, if we're able to target really three pretty distinct audiences with these offers, and the beer stein, that's obviously a single game offer, but things like the give and go pass, the family pack, these are things that as more data feeds into the system, we can be running these promotions all the time. They don't have to be tied to a single game. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is something that has been really interesting, really exciting, kind of post the COVID situation. And so this campaign was a thank you campaign that in partnership with our marketing organization, with our team and players, we were able to film a number of videos from our players thanking a particular frontline hero during the coronavirus situation. And that could be a teacher, it could be a restaurant worker, a hospital worker. And the way that this promotion worked is there was we obviously promoted it on social, but there was a landing page where a fan was able to, put somebody's email address in, send them a personalized video, a personalized message, click the appropriate video to send that person, and then that teacher, that restaurant worker would receive a thank you message from a Caps player, personalized on a landing page with that person's name. And so the thing that I love about this program in particular is we were really forced, and I should say our team, our analytics team was forced to come up with ways to make this solution work. And I like it for a couple of reasons. And one was it kind of comes back to something I may have mentioned earlier, but something that I certainly firmly believe in sort of the process of building out your data structure and certainly your team. And the concept there is flexibility. And so we had a system that allowed us to create this message, create these tools, create the landing page, pull the new email addresses directly into our system, all in an automated way. And there's certainly something about never letting a good crisis go to waste. It forced our team to be innovative about these solutions. And so I can't stress that enough. And it's something that I'll probably touch on, a little bit later. But the idea of having a system that is flexible, is scalable, to us was hugely important. And I think this is a really good example of that. So I think, oh, I'm sorry, one more. The last thing I wanted to talk about was, so now what? And I think that's something that we've tasked our team and our organization to continually be thinking about. And I put a few things down here that we're thinking about. And realistically, the answer to the question of what next is, I don't know. And I don't think in the moment anybody knows. And so what we've got here is a couple of things that we see as next steps to, the products and the system that we've built. Things like fully tying, your in-venue point of sale to your marketing platform and your programs that allow you to single-use offers for a fan who hasn't bought food and beverage in the last 3 games, and you're able to pop them an offer. Things like predictive functionality and machine learning. So it's pretty easy, not surprisingly, to sell wine, to sell jerseys to people whose favorite player has that jersey. What is less easy to do, not surprisingly, is what are the things that aren't, you can't see on the surface, and those are obviously the things that machine learning and AI can help us figure out. Things like, I've attended this arena show, so I'm more potentially interested in this product, either by team or even product within that team. Where do I want to sit? What other, would I be interested in a game with a post-game concert? The other thing that I'll add in here too is the introduction of other kind of AI and machine learning tools as well. So what can you do as leads come into your system from single game buyers? Old school would say, go load those 3,000 single game buyers into your system and get your sales team calling them as soon as possible. And what we've tried to transition into is, instead of 3,000 people getting put onto a list for an inside sales team, let's focus on the 800 that make the most sense to talk to a human being. Here's another 600 that should get an automated email from an AI tool that can, look and feel like a salesperson, but maybe gather more information that way. What are the 600 or 800 that maybe should just go into a Capitals or Wizards or Mystics informational email to try to gain, to try to get an open and a click to see potentially what somebody might be interested in. And maybe there's a couple hundred people on there that we're able to see through the data, have only bought the Penguins game over the last couple of years and have a billing zip code outside of Washington, D.C. They're probably a Penguins fan. They're probably a fan of another team. And so I'm not all that interested in trying to market to those people. And I think we've, in the sports world, we've all seen that, right? Where we bought tickets from somewhere else and eventually unsubscribe from lists that don't send us pertinent information. So a lot to be done on the AI and machine learning. There's all sorts of next steps on smart venue technology. And I think we're only scratching the surface on where that's going to go, especially now given new concepts around social distancing and some of the things that are happening there. And then the idea of the nerve center inside an arena from an operating standpoint is something that we're thinking about. And obviously there's 5, 6, 7 companies all working in harmony between food and beverage, merch, security, as well as your team folks. So how do we get all those people working together and as efficient as possible? So those are a couple of things that are at least the top of my mind as to what could be next. But I think if we learned anything in the last 8 weeks, that we don't have any idea what's coming next. So we'll keep thinking about those things, and obviously a lot of the new stuff that's come onto our plate as well. So that, I'm fairly sure, is my last slide. So I will hand it back over, and we can start talking through some questions, and hopefully things have popped up.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate the insight, and I know people found it interesting because we've got a bunch of questions here. If you do have a question, again, you can go down to the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your Zoom, enter your question, and we'll get to as many as we can in the next 15 to 20 minutes here with Adam. Adam, I'll kick off with one that was asked. What do you see? What is the best way to show ROI for all of your technology platforms? And how are you showing that value to your executive team members and the administration at the various teams and franchises?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's hugely important, right? I mean, if you're not able to show what investments pay off, then obviously you're nowhere. So the simplest example is similar to the very first kind of example I showed of tying ticketing revenue to your email marketing, and just being able to tie back to, hey, look, when we acquire not only a certain amount of new fans, here's the amount of revenue they can drive, but also as you go there deeper in that example, back to, I think it was 30,000 new email addresses. What are my guess is there's an 80-20 inside those 30,000 emails, right? Where 80% of the revenue is driven by 20% of the list. So where did those 20% of people come from? And so for me, it's these insights that allow you to prove incrementality. And so you do that through that example of email acquisition. You do that through promotional opportunities like we talked about. So if you're able to see that our average per cap from a food and beverage stand is $18. If we're going to target a certain audience from with an offer, here's a 10% off, here's a come early and you get this discount. Some of it doesn't even need to be discount. One of the other early things that we integrated into our system was the novel concept of showing people food and beverage that's close to where they're sitting. So we had Chick-fil-A in our building, but there was only a few locations. And one of the things that I think we found frustrating was if I come in and I'm sitting in section 110 and Chick-fil-A is found at section 422, then having a Chick-fil-A ad in that person's pregame email is not all that helpful. And so, that's another way is showing people how do you change behavior of a certain group of customers. So to me, it all comes down to that incrementality, and any way that you're able to show, the success of those promotions, the success of the individual products. And so the only way to do that is to collect as much data as possible and be able to tag all those campaigns and show what you've been able to do.
Great. Another question that was sent over was, outside of the major data sources integrated into the warehouse, what have you found to be your most valuable data sources? So the major ones they identified were Ticketmaster, Eloqua, CRM, but any of the other ones of the 15, have you found any that have been particularly valuable for you?
Yeah, there's been quite a few. So the F&B one is good. And the reason I bring that one up again is because we've actually integrated our F&B data two different ways. And so we have through our partner, through Airmark, our partner Appetize, we get our typical food and beverage data. And how many hot dogs did you sell at this particular stand? And what we've also done is through our partner's credit card processor, Freedom Pay, we've been able to do a purely non-PII issue basis is to take individual data points, a last four of a credit card, a last name, all publicly available information through the transaction, and tie that back to the individual. And I think those are the things that we found the most valuable. And so I won't say the F&B data is a good example, but I think having anything that you're able to tie back to an actual individual. So, what did they buy from a concession stand? What did they click on an email? Obviously, having all of your assets tagged in your email system is a huge thing. What did you potentially buy in the team store? So we have our season ticket holders are able to get a discount by scanning a barcode, and so we get better data that way. So I won't say that it's necessarily a particular integration a singular integration as much as I think it's what you can make sure you get out of each of them. We've started to work with our Iceplex, the Capitals practice facility, which is open to the public and is also a public rink for youth sports and things like that. There's 1 million people that come through that building every year. So some of the things that we've applied to the arena, we've started to do there as well. So Wi-Fi logins, opting into some of our information to receive some of our information when you become a member of a youth team, things like that. So less about a particular integration because I don't want to pick. I feel like, although I tell various of my 2 children that I have a favorite all the time, usually it's the other one, but I would feel bad about picking one over the others.
Fair enough. We've had several questions that have covered privacy concerns and PII. How are you, and you alluded to it in your last response, how are you managing those concerns and applying the law and the information collected? And do you see anything arising from that collection?
This is a funny question because I'm pretty sure I have family that have joined this call and they're lawyers and I'm not, but I do love that I got asked a legal question. So I'll give you my answer as how we think of things sort of ethically from Monumental Sports standpoint. I do want to caveat it with, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a privacy lawyer. So we've taken the approach of a couple things. Like one, we're obviously not going to do anything that breaks any laws. We're going to follow all of the guidelines, and those have changed and certainly gotten more rigorous over time. The main sort of, I guess, the main sort of belief structure that I think we've tried to follow is if you are doing something, if you are purchasing something as a customer within either one of our products or channels, I would say, an email, or if you're within the 4 walls of the building, we're gonna, I feel like as long as, again, we're following applicable rules, information and data collection is fair game. Where I've sort of drawn the line, at least for our organization, is some of the stuff that happens outside the 4 walls. And so, and I'm not saying that if somebody is doing this, they're wrong, but we've been approached by vendor partners who say, hey, look, if you put this line of code into your app, you can capture data on where people go to and from the game. You can capture data on where they might be eating before or after the game. And that's, this isn't going to sound uber professional. That's always felt icky to me. And so we've kind of stayed away from that type of stuff. And so I'm not sure that's a perfect answer from a legal standpoint, but it is obviously something that we think a lot about. And look, we ask for a lot from our fans, from the loyalty perspective of our customers, and we really don't ever want to jeopardize that.
Okay. Couple additional questions on how people can get started. One question was, where do I start if the budget is tight, and how do I start down the path? But another question talked about the sequence of activities that need to be tackled as part of the strategy. I.e., do you recommend that you start with the data warehouse first and capabilities on top of that? Or, where should somebody start if they're trying to get off the ground with this program?
So my answer to that question is I'm not sure it matters. And I guess I would say just start. And I think, I'm really fortunate at our organization at Monumental that we have, buy-in from our president, our executive team, our ownership group. And we also have a strongly resourced team, and that's obviously a huge benefit. Our team, however, and one of the things that I love about it the most is it's a number of experts across differing skills that don't necessarily have the ability maybe to do one another's job. And the way that I think that that's important, and the way that I think that helps answer the question of where do you get started, is as long as you have a group of people who are analytically like-minded, who want to make decisions through data, who want to have the ability to prove ROI in their work, whether you call that your BI team or your strategy and analytics team, I'm not sure it matters. I'm not sure what part of the organization somebody necessarily needs to be in. But as long as you're able to, again, have that group of people who want to go do these types of activities, that's step one, or maybe step 1A. Step 1B, I would say, is find the thing. Somebody that I used to work with said sometimes it's not low-hanging fruit, it's stepping over watermelons. So find the thing that allows you the most quickest win out of the gate, and apply the concepts of data acquisition, data strategy to those things. And it could vary widely by organization. So for a certain team or company or whomever, it might be, hey, look, our biggest challenge, our biggest issue is acquiring new people to our database. So let's go, at least from a starting point, build a tool or a series of tools that allows us to acquire people and then go do stuff, and then email them. Or maybe you say, our biggest challenge as an organization is knowing what's a high quality lead versus a low quality lead. So let's spend the time and energy, building out a tool that could help us learn that. And so again, I think it's just a matter of and I shouldn't say it's just a matter. I don't at all want to sound like I'm oversimplifying any of this. This is hard. This is something that teams have been at for 5-10 years. Starting with ticketing pricing and things like this. So don't. I hope it doesn't come off that I'm acting like this is easy, because it's not. But if you can find a way to solve that first problem. And I also think in a lot of organizations, if you're able to solve that first problem, then people will bring other problems to you. And that's how you start to gain the traction to get that ball rolling to continue to build a data structure.
Sounds great. Thank you. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. With that in, one of them is with the Caps having so much recent success, and obviously your recent Stanley Cup championship. Have you used the same amount of frequency of promotions as you do with the Wizards? But how do you find that balance between a team that has a much higher attendance profile and has had a different level of success? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but I think it comes back to that idea, that concept of having a system that's flexible and allows you to do the things that you want, because whoever asked this question is spot on. It is paramount that you do different things to a different audience, right? So you have a Caps team that's multiple playoff attendee in the last several years, coming off a Stanley Cup championship. You have a Wizards team that's struggled with some injuries and obviously is having a demand problem. And so doing the same thing and expecting different results is crazy. So what we have tried to do is use the flexibility in the system to do things that maybe aren't necessarily promotionally driven, but are engagement driven. So how do you utilize things like Caps Pub? So we were one of the first teams to integrate the dog. So does Captain and his insanely ludicrous number of social media followers sell tickets? Not necessarily, but if you're able to integrate content around Captain and drive engagement, go after a younger audience, to go after a different audience, you're able to use the tools and the resources that you have to acquire those fans, and then potentially utilize them from a marketing standpoint in the long run. Whereas the Wizards, certainly the activity is going to be revenue generation and things like that. Ted coined a phrase, how are we putting goodwill deposits into our piggy bank, so that whenever Alex Ovechkin runs out of gas, which hopefully is not ever, you have the ability and you have the resources to continue to run a successful business. But it's definitely a challenge, and it's something that you have to, at least for us as a multi-property organization, you have to think about, doing the right thing at the right time. And I think one, it comes back to that flexibility point, and two, in terms of putting all your eggs in one basket. I've seen other companies, and not even outside of sports, but it's the idea of putting all of your innovation chips into the new technology that maybe isn't going to be around in a couple of years. And I feel like there are teams and companies that have done that. Whereas again, we tried to really have that flexible system that you can scale and pivot pretty quickly.
I think we've got time for one more question. And unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them, but we tried to get to as many of them as we could. The last question is, what automated journeys are really bringing the most revenue and value to your organization?
Another good question. I think, the concept of the automated sales lead is certainly one of them, right? So how do we tell what fan should go to the right channel at the right time? We've tried to automate as much of our data as possible, especially from a visualization standpoint. We've got a team that's been fantastic on integrating that data to the betterment of a lot of teams around the organization. So from a Salesforce perspective, we use Tableau as our data visualization tool. I think having the right information in front of the right people is really, that's the whole reason that you do this. So I think the concept of right lead to the right person at the right time. I think from an email perspective, our team has done a fantastic job about being able to work with teams around the organization who, I think we've all seen this, the old school sales rep who keeps 5,000 email addresses and sends them all out as a BCC. That's maybe good for him as an individual, but as an organization, having those sends be automated, having them be on brand, is truly where you need to be. As evidenced by the current situation that we find ourselves in, and in a very short amount of time, needing to communicate with 10, 20, 30 stakeholder groups about what a potential credit means to them and how it's going to go to applied and all of these things. So, having all of those things be as automated as possible, I would say, the revenue generation is coming from those leads and getting them to the right person. But also the automation of the CRM and the data visualization, for all of our managers around the organization has been hugely helpful.
Great. Adam, first and foremost, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your insights and the best practices from you and your team at Monumental, because you do have a great team there at Monumental with our community. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to do it, guys.
We're going to be sending out a link to the webinar for everybody that would like to watch it later. You can also view it by going to ssbinfo.com and clicking on our webinar page there, so you can view it on demand. There will also be a short survey you receive when you leave the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you could just take 2 minutes to do your feedback. But we will return with our next webinar at the end of the month. We'll be publicizing that soon. You can find it on our website, but also we'll be communicating that out. But thanks again to Adam, and thanks everybody for participating. We appreciate it, and everybody stay safe and healthy out there.
You're welcome. Thank you.